Ready, Tom?
Let's do it.
Playing the track 3D Politics. Let's roll from your My Media collection.
Once again, here we are, social distancing 3D Politics Live. Tom McKay, your amazing host, all by myself, alone and yet together, as they say. Two other Davids here on an exciting April 13th. We've got a lot to talk about. What do you two Davids say? You both there? Can I hear you?
Yeah.
Well, hey, I'm not in the COVID chase car at the moment.
That's good. It's always good because you never know what can hit you when you're in the COVID chase car. We do have we're going to try to do everything we can to talk about anything besides the 300-pound virus in the room. And hopefully we will go through some stuff that's going to go on, whether there's a virus or not. The Oklahoma Democrats are some of the topics we're going to touch tonight.
Yeah.
The Oklahoma Democrats are outraged by their Socialist Party leadership. Isn't that standard positioning for children? They cry for what they want. When they get it, they cry for what they got. And then 43 lawmakers, actually 43 lawmakers were reelected on Friday. Nobody's even trying to run. And that's a whole nother story. There's a Dr. Sudduth, or Sudduth, however you properly pronounce that, exposed. This doctor was trying to help. He was exposed to COVID-19 in Bartlesville, and it's just a policy outrage. We'll talk about that. How people are going there because they know how to help, and they're being forced to not to help in the way it's not appropriate to keep themselves safe. Oklahoma's forecast is adjusted back and up later for peak and more deaths. We've got pandemic politics from Oldham, and he's loaded to the gill with some other stuff tonight. Happy birthday, Jefferson, Thomas Jefferson, right? And
yes.
Then there's house arrests are actually bills of attainder, according to Oldham. I can't wait to hear more of that. So before we roll into all the stuff, because there it is and what we're going to talk about, I'm going to try to avoid saying the word COVID-19. Take a drink every time you do. And so, but so it's been a tumultuous last few weeks. Yeah. Gentlemen, before we get started and before we start the show, what's going on in your life? How are we doing before we get rolling?
Well, I've got 3 new resolutions.
Okay, let's hear them.
These are my quarantine resolutions. Number 1, I'm not as big about jumping in the shower since I'm at home.
Well, why is that?
Because, well, the other day my wife got to use the bathtub before me, and I got all that bath oil. I jumped in there. I thought I was going to the hospital. You know, you step in gently, not as much jumping. That's 1. Number 2, we don't need a hot water heater. We just heat the cold water, but that's another thing. So my gas bill went down by, I got a thermostat on that thing now.
Okay, good. Well, yeah.
And and number 3, I'm not into this social distancing. I haven't found a way to distance people and be social about it. So now I'm anti-social distancing.
Well,
and that's God's honest truth.
And that's the question. And are you completely terrified of every neighbor, near and far yet?
They walk on the other side of the street when they see me coming. They just go on over the other side. I'm offended.
I was an optimist till like March 17th, and I'm a total pessimist. And not because of the government, because of the reaction of the people to what the government's doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I see grown, healthy young men and women out there with their masks on, afraid of me. Yeah.
Well, but here's the thing is, and I shared I think we talked about it last week. You put it up, the meme that I made with the couple being, having protection.
Yes.
But this whole idea of PPE versus what I'm calling PPH, or the prophylaxis for public hysteria. The this idea that we have to protect everybody else from ourselves. Fortunately, I'm just going back to your initial question, Tom. I'm considered essential, don't you know? So
That's good.
So my life is more or less normal, except that the workflow has slowed. You know, I'm not doing as much, and I'm going further to get it.
I feel like it's cruel and unusual punishment to hear traffic reports on the local news station. That's kind of mean.
I tell you what, though, it is really nice to be out at rush hour.
Yeah,
and not have the rush hour.
Yeah, you
really
bourgeoisie essentials. You go on, talk about it.
Yeah, but you guys remember, it was, a month ago was the last time we all got together in the studio, and we went out to grab a burger the night, after the show.
We were allowed.
Yeah, before consumerism died. Yes, go ahead.
Well, but remember that restaurant was essentially a ghost town. I mean, hardly anybody was there. And then the next day, the mayor said, "Oh yeah, you restaurants need to close."
Right.
I kind of think, in a way, it channeled our anger towards the government instead of each other, because people were staying home anyway, largely.
Well, I guess the thing is that I didn't see people out there. It's been the government that's been really fomenting this.
Yes.
And the media fomenting this thing that, oh, you have to, you're guilty for not, for just being you and just living and doing ordinary things and for being non-essential.
And some more than others, right, Dave? There's some communities, some states that are going hogwire, but not all of them.
Oh, yes. Oh, and there, in fact, I put up an article today written by a contributor to Constitutional Grounds, and he was pointing out some things that I hadn't even heard of. So you can find it at Constitutional Grounds. But some of the weird things. I mean, New Hampshire was going out and arresting people and declaring forced quarantine on anybody with a New York license plate.
Yeah. And
some of these people had spent months in New Hampshire because they have multiple residences. They have, a New Hampshire residence and a New York residence. And so they got out of New York early on before they had any chance to be exposed, supposedly.
Yeah.
But they were going to be under some sort of a decree. And who knows when, if they got caught again, would that be a new
Yeah, and I mean,
quarantine, but they were literally going out and the cops were rounding up New Yorkers.
I have, supported Trump, in the efforts because I saw which direction we were headed otherwise. And yet I had to kind of correct some of the things that he and everybody on his team has been saying. This is not a war, and the virus isn't smart. It's not invisible. It's an identifiable virus, and they're treating it. I see myself as a wartime president. Well, I see myself as an NFL wide receiver, but, guess what?
I see myself as a billionaire. I just am waiting for the government to fulfill my dream.
So, I'm just saying this idea that it's an invisible, this whole concept that he's a wartime president is completely bogus. Right.
Remember, it's the wag the dog thing. They all want to garner that support, everybody rally around our leaders because we're under attack.
Right.
But they have been trying to do this thing as though we're under martial law, and that just automatically suspends the Constitution, and they can issue whatever orders they want. The thing is that's not even the way we wage war.
Right. Right. It's not a war.
It shouldn't be anyway.
And I love it. Somebody was talking on the radio the other day, blah, blah, blah. And that's where this analogy breaks down, because it's not really an enemy that fights like a war. Yeah, because the whole war analogy was a bad start in the first place. Plus, what they do is they go halfway through with overestimating all of their full-blown gloom and doom, and then when it comes in not so bad, they say, "Oh yeah, it's working, and we've got so much what I call equity of sacrifice." Oh well, you've obeyed like a little slave so far. We've got to keep it going because it's working. It's working.
Well, it's the same unprovable sort of thing. Like Obama always claimed how many jobs he'd saved, right?
So,
absolutely unknowable.
Created or saved, which is
created
what they're doing.
Or saved.
Yeah, they're doing the same
as though
thing
he
now.
had done it, and it's the same thing here. We would have been at the multi-millions dead if we hadn't taken these drastic actions, and now we're at, what, 15,000.
Right, and as a capitalist,
not
I'm
even
saying we would have been so much better off not investing in all these social investments like the Vision 2025 package, where we can't use any of the stuff that we co-own. All of the stuff that we co-own, that we paid, all these socialist community, we're going to benefit from having the Gilcrease Museum that you can't go to. None of the stuff that you co-own, you can co-use when the government shuts it down. I'll bet you what, if the mayor wanted to go see the paintings at the Gilcrease Museum right now, I bet you he could get in and go take a peek at some of those pictures. But I can't.
Well, is the Gilcrease is publicly owned? I thought it was privately owned, but
it's privately managed. But it is it belongs
called
to the
fascism,
city.
Oldham. It's privately owned, government controlled.
I just didn't know. I thought it was publicly funded but a private organization.
It's
same thing with the
officially
library.
all the assets belong to the city.
Okay.
Well, but it's managed privately.
Right.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. It's government controlled, privately managed, privately. So that's called fascism, where it's privately controlled. So remember, we spent the money on the PAC. We spent $1 million on the PAC for Vision 2025 just for planning. They weren't even going to do anything but plan. Well, now they've sold the PAC to the trust. We don't even own the PAC anymore. Yep. So, I mean,
we own the trust, supposedly.
Oh, well, that's good, because I'm sure I'll get my ticket.
You know what? We own the trust. We own the trust when it's legal to own the trust, and then we say it doesn't belong to the government when it's convenient. The whole reason for a trust is because it would be illegal for the city to own it outright.
Correct.
Because they're supposed to balance your budget, and the trust can get away with not having a balanced budget. Furthermore, though, I can't use the PAC right now, because my money is wasted money on Vision 2025 because the PAC is not open. Well, we couldn't have seen it coming, Tom. Yes, we could. In fact, Dan Rather tweeted, he twatted the other day, 2014, Obama was talking about the oncoming pandemic. Okay, so just they know what they have planned, and Obama told us in 2014 that what about a pandemic, and here it comes. And so we all knew this was coming. It was the bad plan to go into the socialist concept of buying all this group-oriented investment because we can't use it. And guess what? Your taxes in Tulsa are going up. This summer in 2021, the taxes are going up in Tulsa. Sales taxes going up 62.5%.
Wow.
So anyway, I guess we should start the show. What about the Oklahoma? Van's got a story on Oklahoma. If you're just tuning in, this is the first social distancing exciting episode over Zoom of 3D Politics Live. It will come out live on Facebook later. And the first story we're doing tonight, after all that raucous intro, was the Oklahoma Democrats are outraged by their Socialist Party leadership. This tweet coming from Kathy Cummins, unbelievable, she says, that 42 House and Senate seats went unchallenged. Candidate recruitment should have been top priority from day one, over and above everything. If we can't get Democrats on the ballot, says Kathy Cummings, we can't accomplish anything. What's the story about, David?
Well,
Van?
yeah. Now, Kathy here, I guess, is the mayor of a little suburb in Oklahoma City area called The Village. How appropriate. And so, yeah, what happened last year, we had one of the craziest reorganizations of the Democrat Party in Oklahoma. And I mean, remember, we were talking about it. They were actually using emergency order protections to keep the opponents out of the convention. People were running for state party chair like Mike Workman, and he couldn't even go to the convention because we've got this illegal, without due process, keeping people out of public discourse. So
ex parte orders.
Yeah, so what we got, I bet you're going to have more to say about that. Another topic tonight, Oldham. But so what we got, the election of the new state party chair was so confused and so controversial. Then they found out that the voting had to be redone the next day, and then half the people showed up for the next round of votes. And I think whoever won it was like by 12 votes. Well, anyway, the Socialists have taken over the Democrat Party in Oklahoma. And what you got as a result is, did you notice the elections last time around? I think we were left with only about 4 Democrats outside of the big metropolitan areas that are still in the legislature. And Johnny Tadlock right away he could see what was happening. He switched parties. He's down there in McCurtain County, Little Dixie. Right. And so now he's a Republican, and by God, he's more conservative than probably most of the Republicans. You know, so what's going on here
who probably just switched from the Democrat Party, right?
Yeah. Now here, this is an important thing. I'm going to say this to my radical right-wing zealots who, you know, are all about, you know, philosophical purity. We cannot have somebody be our party nominee unless they check off all the bullet points in our platform, okay? Because the Democrats are doing this on the other side, and they're not recruiting anybody unless they can get some kind of philosophical purity out of them, again, with the party leadership, the Socialists. And so they can't recruit in half of the Senate and in House seats. Actually, there were 53 of the, let's see, we got 124 seats, 125 seats. And 53 of them, they didn't even file a candidate. So, you know, it's worse than the 42 she said. Yeah. It's actually 53.
Well, it's the 53 who will be, you'll have a total of 53 come June or whenever they actually hold the primary. They will then be, but you've got, which means you've only got 10 contested Republican seats with another Republican.
Right. Yeah.
I know Sand Springs has a contention going on.
Well, yeah, and then there are some other ones where there's also an independent or a libertarian, but not a Democrat on the ticket. Okay. And so what's happening here is we've got a Democrat Party that's no longer truly a statewide party. They're the 2 metropolitan areas, and that's it.
Right.
You know, because now here's what you got left. You got Matt Meredith from Tahlequah, a Democrat, but by God, he votes for every one of the OK2A endorsed bills, and some of them, if he's not sure where they stand, he'll vote with the Republicans because he's scared to death of the Second Amendment money and organization to running him out.
And because his area out there is huge hunting area.
Yes, that's your old stomping grounds.
Oh, yeah, his district needs him to be that way. Otherwise, he'd get a revolt.
Right. And
let me just chime in. Also, the rural areas are not just simply hunting. It from a law enforcement standpoint, it takes a longer period of time for officials of police enforcement to show up.
Oh, yeah.
People who live rural have to enforce their own protection.
That's a good point.
Because the cops literally can't get there.
You're talking depending upon where you're at, 30, 45 minutes minimum for a response, generally speaking. in a lot of those
Yeah.
areas.
If they take it seriously when they get the call.
So you
Well, they have to
had
come from the other side of the
they
county.
get like, yeah,
It's
this is
taking
real
longer.
first, you know.
Yeah, so you had 4 Democrats from rural areas after the last election. One of them switched to Republicans, Tadlock. Then you've got David Perryman from Chickasha that he's out. He's not going to run again. He just says, I'm done.
Okay.
And then you've got Ben Loring up there in Miami, well, almost to Joplin. He barely won last time. I think it was maybe a dozen votes that he made it in by as a Democrat. And he's a big law and order Democrat. You know, he's actually a former prosecutor. And then you got Matt Meredith. And quite honest with you, you've got one more guy trying to come back. And we'll get into that later about Steve Copeland. But this is the problem with the Democrats. And I think Republicans, rather than just gloating and celebrating about it, need to learn from this mistake of being so far to an extreme that you can't recruit the more moderate candidates that have a chance.
Oh, right.
Right. It's like the libertarians, you know, the libertarians of Harry Brown, 1999, 2000, they were actually like people you could, you know, deal with. They were into individual rights, even if you were a fetus. But today's libertarians, I mean, they're like just 2 steps closer than Paul Tay. You know, they're off the edge. It's guilt by association if you even discuss with them. So,
well, Joe Exotic got votes.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, we're right off the edge. You know, everybody worried about his hair, but I mean, how can you straighten that nose? Almost no way. Like, I didn't know a tiger could pack a punch that would break your exotic nose like that. I had no idea. The best part, hey, if you're just tuning in, because I know you are, this is 3D Politics Live. Tom McKay, your amazing host. I've got David Vann with Sooner Politics, David Oldham with Constitutional Grounds. And I just have to say the best thing about this whole pandemic is no basketball. The only thing worse than soccer, no offense, but, you know, is
I'm
basketball.
watching a lot of good soccer.
I'll bet you
because
are.
They're showing all the best ofs. And so there's a lot of good soccer. And they've cut out all the junk, you know, all the fill, as it were.
So they just show when the ball goes in the net. Cut out all the
there's a lot of that. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of that going on. So
anyway, Oldham and I always have this thing about soccer because he just loves it. And David Vann is a Foursquare player.
That's right.
Challenge him to use a football on that. But the main thing I love about this is there's no March Madness, no more basketball privilege, because I'm just done with it. And thank goodness we don't have to watch 85 teams play 85 games of basketball madness. We're going to talk more also. What about, now, there's a guy by the name of Dr. Sudduth. I hear that he was trying to help out. He was forced by some bad policy to not take his own precautions that he wanted to. I have people that I know that were considering taking the great money, some $10,000 a week, to go to New York and work as a respiratory therapist there to help people. And the people that I know that trade, they're like, oh, I should go help. And I'm like, why? They said, because I know how to do it right. And my question was, what makes you think they'll allow you to do it properly? Tell us about how Dr. Sudduth contracted this disease, COVID.
Yeah, and I've got his picture posted up there, smiling in the hospital scrubs. Chris, I got to know Chris about 4 years ago. He's been helping with some mental health, public policy, and works quite a bit with Senator Joe Newhouse, and just a fine young man. He was just 2 weeks from leaving that hospital as a hospitalist and going into his own practice. And so he's taking care of someone right there, and they did not have a test for this woman in the hospital, but she's coughing up, dry coughs up, has all the symptoms. And yet, because they didn't have a test, the hospital, which I guess is part of Ascension St. John's, I'm going to put the name out there, the hospital told all the staff, you can't use the good masks, the masks that actually work. the N95 mask unless they're actually tested and confirmed positive for a COVID-19. So he has to put on their typical operating room, the light paper, fluffy little pleated one, and it didn't work. The guy ends up sick within a few days, and my God, it was horrible. And he talks about it. You can pull it up on KTUL.com, Channel 8's news site. And I'm just happy to know Chris is back. He survived it, but he was inpatient. He got hit really hard. He's a healthy young man, you know, and it's just really sad to see this kind of thing happening when they had a stockpile of masks, but we're told, no, you can't use them. Now, I've got to say, in defense of the public policy, is it's changed to 2 days. Yeah, 2 days later, they said, no, anytime you suspect somebody, you put on the N95 mask. So this is a problem when government starts commandeering materials and starts telling a hospital that they can't use their own protective wear.
Well, and this is how good people get hurt, because they say, look, I'll throw myself in there in a dangerous situation because I know how to protect myself.
Yeah.
And then somebody who doesn't know what they know tells them, oh, here's the rule. And this is bureaucracy. Just bureaucracy rolls through your safety checkpoint.
Yeah. No, here's another point to it. He knew that mask he was putting on didn't have a chance to protect him, but he still took care of the woman. Still got her, and she got tested. She started getting treatment, and from my understanding, the woman survived. So he, provided proper care. Right. He was doing his due diligence, even though it put his life at risk. But this just tells me the masks that all of us are being ordered to wear, the scarves, the bandanas, aren't doing squat. So why are we even being told we have to wear them?
Well, remember, you're being told you have to wear them as PPH, not PPE.
Tell everybody what PPH and PPE is. Okay. I mean,
PPE stands for Personal Protective Equipment. Now, forever until this time around, and with vaccines, it's been coming on, is that we now are considered by pharma and everything to owe it to everyone else to make ourselves completely sterile so that we are it's impossible for us to pass anything along to anybody else. That's the propagation. PPH, as I'm using it, I'm making that term up, but that's where it's protective equipment for everybody else. Okay? And
so we're all dirty.
We're all dirty. We are tainted. You are tainted. You are a filthy,
40 years to try to say
human being. And that is why you must wear this thing. And all these masks are now being the bandanas and all that. That is just to keep your spittle, because you go around spitting on everybody and breathing on everybody. And so therefore you're going to infect people. So you're wearing this thing to keep from infecting them. That is what it is actually why you're being ordered. These things. It has nothing to do with being ordered to protect yourself from everything else, because these things have absolutely no protection against the virus whatsoever.
Instead of all this PPH, PPE, why don't we just get them a gold star, that they wear, keep them in a certain area in town? And
well, that's coming. Look, that you think you make a joke, but that's exactly what it is. No, Bill Gates has come out just this past week or two. He's come out and says that he wants to see everybody have a chip on a card or something like that they can get your papers, and you have to prove that you've either had it, you've got the antibodies, or that you have been vaccinated for it in order to then go out and so that we can then restart the economy. But you're not going to be able to do it without that paperwork, that star to say you can go out and indicate what you are.
So Van, are you for or against the chip? You going to get one? You and the wife.
I have no idea what it is.
I say the plan is for you, Van, is you get the chip and your wife doesn't. That way you both can kind of play the system.
Yeah. I'm more concerned about what's it going to take. Let's take Chris Sudduth here.
Yeah.
Why should he have to wear a mask now?
Well, I don't know why he should or shouldn't be forced to do either.
Yeah, just based on their logic.
Well, based on their logic, actually his breathing on people should be better. It should actually be passing antigens or antibodies, not antigens. But by the same token, we don't know that he can't be now asymptomatic and carry and carry the pathogens, the virus, and not pass it. We don't know that because that hasn't been determined.
Whatever happened to being presumed innocent?
Well, that's going to get into what I'm talking about with the bills of attainder and all of that. And I've been saying that. How many weeks have I been saying that the Fifth Amendment, the presumption of innocence, is gone?
Way to go, Oldham. It's your fault. You made it happen.
This is what they've been doing. So yeah, I mean, everything is flipped on its head. The only change in this disease is how we're looking at it. That's and the way that the public has been ingrained and indoctrinated to look at it. And frankly, that comes down to advertising through the bot advertising, the bot news, the fake media, the fake news media, just putting out pharma ads via news or as news sources.
I used to do a routine called Weathertude. You know, we know how the weather feels, but how do you feel about the weather? That's your Weathertude. And I can't believe we've been able to be slipped into this idea where they're starting to report as news whatever the feels like weather is. You know, they tell you the wind chill temperature, which is like, well, that's, you know, what, am I going to argue the difference between 2 and 3? I will, of course. Oh yeah, I'll tell you what it feels like. But now we've moved into all these fake reports of those.
Well, remember that it's been all this fear mongering for years about measles, a simple childhood disease.
Yeah, I had measles.
That I mean, it was so common that you had a Brady Bunch episode where everybody got it. You had a My Three Sons before that, and it's stuff like that. So, or a Waltons. It was My Three Sons or Waltons or something. Anyway, but the point was that we've had so much fear mongering, and you've got to protect yourself from all this stuff, and it's sold as news. I mean, we've got outbreak, and it's 3 cases in a state of 3.5 million, and they make a big news deal out of it. That it's cases. It's not even anything bad. It's just cases reported.
Yeah. And if you've been around long enough, you can see how they did with it. We used to never know what the ozone layer was till all of a sudden we got the ozone layer presented. Then it was the ozone alert day. Well, what is that? We can't mow your lawn or drive your car on that day. And then now, instead of actually waiting until the ozone alert day becomes another, they predict them. And now tomorrow we know it's going to be an ozone alert day, and that's what they're going to do with the pandemic. With this pandemic, they have inserted an annual panic that will go along with Easter. Every year we're going to be asked to lock down for this year's upcoming pandemic. And it's just going to be seasonal. This gets to your point about advertising. They advertise the fear, like you were saying.
Yeah, well, and we already have that with the flu. We've had it with H1N1. We've had it for years. They continually bring that up. Is it coming back? Is it the bird flu, the swine flu? Is it the Spanish flu? I mean, are we revisiting 1918 all over again? And COVID is a form or a generation off of the Spanish flu, supposedly, somehow. Anyway.
That's no way to kill cockroaches.
either COVID or some of these other things. But
nobody knows that one.
except you can't kill cockroaches. That's the point.
Yeah.
But these things, they already do it. I mean, I saw I mean, they had tables lined up, and they're now giving flu shots. Pharmacists are now giving flu shots. It used to be that they actually made people be not quite phlebotomists, but you had to be a nurse or something like that, or a nurse assistant or a physician's assistant in order to give a shot. Now they've opened it up for pharmacists to give shots and pharmacy techs and things like that.
Wait a minute, Oldham. That's just loosening up our licensing requirements. That's liberty. You should be for that.
Wow. Not during a damn pandemic.
So that's going the right direction, right?
Yes.
Hey, on those, I got a question on those vaccines, like the flu thing. It's not even a vaccine; it's a flu shot. But I mean, do you have to hit a vein with that, or is it just going to the muscle?
No, it's just into the muscle.
Or
under
fatty
the skin.
tissue. Yeah.
It's hypodermic.
Well, that.
It shouldn't be deep, but I don't know exactly where they shoot with it. It used to be, and they've lightened up so many things. In fact, they create problems, and nurses say they create problems partly because they don't aspirate once they're in. They don't pull back a little bit and get a little bit of fluid coming from your body and then inject. That they say is a problem. I've talked to a couple nurses.
Why do they do that?
I don't know. I've never been trained in it, so I don't know. But now they just kind of inject and shoot it, and it might be that it has a chance to inject a little air. I don't know what the entire point is.
That's true. You don't want to be putting air in.
Well, you certainly don't want that. That's a different issue, but but they say there's certain things that they're not doing now that they used to do. And they've taken off of best practices, and with these new people, they're making it so it's simpler to give. So they don't train as much on it, and it's causing some of the side effects.
Maybe we should write a law that makes them do it.
Well, actually, no.
I'll enforce it.
Actually, no. The point is that it should be in there that you can sue. The problem is that because it is a vaccine, you can't, because they're given unconstitutional protection by government that you can't. And so even the malpractice about how it's given is protected.
Hey, if you're just tuning in, once again, Tom McKay here with 3D Politics. I got David Oldham, Constitutional Grounds, and David Van from Sooner Politics talking anything besides the 300-pound virus in the room, and yet
We've
still
done nothing but
having to talk about it no matter what. I mean, it's kind of like original sin. How are you going to get out of it, right?
Yeah.
I
Get the
gotta
band back together.
Oh yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah. So 3 years ago, there was these guys, the Blues Brothers, I call them, but it was actually the Platform Caucus. And this is Chuck Strom and Sean Roberts. They organized a caucus of truly solid, principled, conservative, went by the Republican Platform Caucus, the statement of principle. And by golly, they were able to coalesce a group of, I would say, roughly a dozen or so, more or less, depends on the vote, of people that would say, no, we campaigned on these principles. We joined the Republican Party because of the party platform principles. And, this turned into the biggest bloodletting fight, is civil war within the legislative Republican caucus, to where you had their colleagues raising money to give to opponents of these incumbents. And it turned into the nastiest thing. Well, Chuck Strom, there with on the left, he was defeated because they went out and recruited somebody, run against him, gave him a lot of money, and really pushed for it. Sean Roberts barely made it back in last time, I think by less than 100 votes in his House district. But now this time, here's the cool thing. 3 of the guys who were part of that Platform Caucus who didn't make it into the next session, either they just said, you know what, I'm out of here, or they went down to defeat. 3 of them said, okay, I'm running again. One was George Fott from the Muskogee area. Now, this will be his 3rd tour of duty because he was serving in the House and then decided in 2012 to run for the 2nd District congressional race. That went to a runoff. He barely lost that. It was a tough race. But then he got his seat back a couple years later, and now he's going to run again. Then you've got Rick West, so freshman from over there in God's country. When you get off of the Talamina Drive, just before the Arkansas border, you just dump right into Rick West's side. Beautiful.
I always get off when I'm on the Tallahassee Drive.
There you go. There you go.
Go ahead,
So-
Dan. I'm just trying to help you out.
Anyway, and then who else we got? There's somebody else that's running. Mike Christian from Midwest City. He left the legislature to run for sheriff. He didn't get the support that he should have had from the Republican Party over there, and he lost to Wetzel. And the whole community would have been better off. They would have got rid of Wetzel before the scandal hit. Because that guy Sheriff Wetzel was running the deadliest jail in the United States. And so Mike Christian's coming back, or plotting his return. Then you got Chuck Strom here. Now, I talked to him. We were at a Christmas party last December, and he said, business is going good. I'm not interested in getting a rematch here and going back in. So I said, well, I tell you who should run. I pointed his wife standing there right by us. I said, Angela should run. I said, she's probably a better debater than you, Chuck. Well, you know what? Angela just filed. So got Angela coming in. She might, if she gets in, she might be the most determined conservative stalwart in the traditional conservative sense. Not always what Oldham and I would call liberty. Yeah. But anyway, having a real strong, fearless voice. So what's happening here, we've gotten a bunch more other ones come in that who knew they would be so conservative. We got guys like David Hardin. Remember David Hardin, Oldham? He wrote that great bill about Second Amendment rights where he's quoting from the Constitution. Hey, listen, fabulous. Tom, I think Oldham had an orgy just reading that, an orgy.
Would you call somebody was reading this, he's like, hey, everybody come over.
See, these are terms they're not familiar with.
Yeah, of course.
Anyway,
but here's what LSD is like. Go ahead.
So we've got what could end up being, even if it isn't an official Platform Caucus, you've got a contingent of strong conservatives there, depending on the issue. It won't always vote identical, but you're going to have what looks like the resurgence of a strong conservative faction of the House.
It'll be something, hopefully, that we can work with, and hopefully they will take to some education about the Constitution.
Yeah.
Just because there are aspects that where they actually will end up in their own way, although it's from the conservative, the right-hand point of view, they will line up with as tyrants dictating to the rest of us. And I just want to see that end.
And tell us how that happens typically.
Well, typically what it is they want to have dictatorial power so that they can dictate things like we're going to have school prayer and take captive audiences and force them to be party to something they don't like. Usually or that they will they will try to impose their beliefs on the rest of us. Prohibition of drugs is a prime example.
Bingo. 4 years ago, if a mother had a little bottle of CBD oil to treat her kids, let's say a seizure issue, she could go 5 years of jail for that. 5 years.
It was the people on the right that kept seizing children, all because of their their deluded
Yeah.
fear of marijuana and CBD.
Yeah.
And so they're really something to be feared in their own right, but they generally are better than the rest.
Okay.
And we just have to work with them. Hopefully they will be open and not so caught in their personal beliefs that they want to run roughshod over the rest of us.
If I may just add there, the argument between whether using CBD or not using CBD oil is proper or not is the weeds. In this particular example, the parents should decide. It's really not, I mean, it's not about whether the CBD oil is good or bad, really.
Right.
It's up to the parents' decision.
The point is that we need to reestablish individual and parental rights. And that runs in the face of somebody trying to dictate to you what you must do because of some personal belief on the part of the legislator.
Yeah, and another area that Oldham, I'm sure you agree with me on, is the blue laws. Legislating that, Sunday you go to church, you don't go shopping, or things like that. Because we still have several of those on the books. I was talking to Henry Grimo the other day. He said, I still can't sell a car on Sunday.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
That car dealers, I don't even know all the blue laws here in Oklahoma, but I know that there are too many, and that somehow they ever had the authority to create them is just absolutely asinine.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, getting back to this Platform Caucus, if they can hold certain things in check and understand that, people can be devout in their faith and still have practices of maybe I go to church on Thursdays and Tuesdays, right? Because the Apostle Paul said, hey, there's some people treat one day as more, holy than another. And so, so you're going to have to dialogue with them. I think Oldham's correct in that. I think this bunch, we probably do have the opportunity to have a respectful dialogue and bring things in the right direction.
As you guys talk about the future, one of the things I'm scared of for the class of 2027, because it was 2 years ago when the teachers walked out on the children and screwed up all of the reading programs for the third graders. 2 years later, now the fifth graders that were screwed up in third grade are having their year screwed up again. The fifth graders this year will graduate in 2027. They will be the least prepared among us and the most prone to being scared into obedience by the government. And just like the blackouts, and we have more children, we've already heard people talking about, because of the pandemic and people being closed in, we're going to have a little burst of population. There's going to be babies born in 9 months. And unfortunately, those babies will be born to the people most likely afraid and scared and easily controlled through fear. And so those children then will also be taught to be controlled by fear. And up until last March 17th, I was an optimist, but it's gone now, kids.
Yeah.
Well, I find myself going back and forth over the last couple of weeks. Good, bad.
Yeah.
But you might be surprised, because as more people are actually being homeschooled, as they're being taught online, and they're finding new curriculums, you might find that the teachers are not doing as good, are not as necessary. In fact, I happened to be witness to a Zoom, we're using Zoom tonight, a Zoom call, because so many teachers are doing their classes. They're continuing to teach. They're just doing it via Zoom. They do an hour or two, and that's their class for the day. And young kid, and I was witnessing, mom was playing the video, sitting down with the kid while he went through and did all of this stuff as the teacher, and I could just hear the teacher, what she was teaching. And I'm like, that is not the way I would teach, but I don't teach that age of child either.
Yeah.
But it just seemed like such a waste. It and I would think that there are people, you know, our friends over at Epic and so forth are probably better at it than some of these, and some of these programs are probably better and get to the issue and do a better job of getting to the issue than some of these teachers that do it in classroom all day.
Yeah, Van, what do you got? What do you got on that?
Oh, no, I'm just thinking that's going to go to a whole nother show. We do need to, we probably got enough on our plate tonight, but I'm going to probably be checking in with the folks from Epic on how this change has happened and how it's going to impact when I think people are going to see how the public schools screw up on online. Yep. It's going to be just another flood of people going to Epic because Epic does it right. You know, they wouldn't keep growing if they weren't doing it so well.
They're showing results, good results.
You know, as I referenced earlier, 2014, Obama talked about here comes a pandemic. I remember in 1995, Tulsa Public Schools did a $90 million bond issue for infrastructure and technology to upgrade the schools for what they hadn't even said yet would be called distance learning, preparing it for the high-speed internet and the information highway. And so what I'm saying is since 1995, at least in Tulsa Public Schools, and $90 million back then, and all of the sudden Joy Hoffmeister last week or whatever, it's like, I got an idea, distance learning. Like we've known since 95, 2014, and Epic has been doing it way in advance of the government. Public schools have been derelict in their duty for at least a quarter of a century.
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Sickening.
Yep. Yep.
But you can still get your milk.
Yeah. Oh, that's, yeah, the other thing is we can't have them getting close together, so we got to close the schools, but we got to gather them for the meals, though, still.
You can sure get your milk. And we're going to give milk to children age 21 if they're enrolled in an IEP. Well, how do you know if they're in an IEP if you're not checking their IDs?
Right.
Oh, we're not checking the IDs.
Yeah.
Oh, we're on the verge of papers, please. I mean, we've already got it. You've got it every time cop pulls you over or whatever. It's
the sobriety checkpoint's your perfect example right there. You might as well have those.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have viral checkpoints, virus checkpoints or something like that.
So before we talk about, because I know you guys not only work with the Apostle Paul but also Thomas Jefferson, because it's his birthday apparently, and is it like today? Today's his birthday. Way to go, Thomas Jefferson. And got to give him
Tom,
credit.
extra credit if you can tell me the day he died.
It would have been July 4th, 1782.
No.
50
July
years
4th.
after he
50
signed
years
the
after the Declaration of Independence. So it was
I had the day right, but I didn't have
the day.
Yes.
Well,
and,
to the announcement, the signing happened on the 2nd, but
yeah. Oh, see, you killed it, man.
It's like that. It's like the Iwo Jima flag. Yeah, sure.
But it was announced on the 4th.
Right, and extra credit on top of that. John Adams died the same afternoon.
Yes.
Yeah, I hear they were in a Twitter war when that happened. Hey,
actually, they were best friends. They were very good.
Sure,
very close
later.
friends.
That's the
Later
rumor.
they were.
That's the rumor, Oldham. Hey, if you're just tuning in, it's 3D Politics. Tom McKay right here, David Oldham, David Van. And I don't know, did we clear up the bills of attainder? Because I thought that was a pretty heavy topic.
No, we haven't.
Okay, let's talk about what bills of attainder are and how it is that the people that are promoting let's not spread the COVID virus are actually acquiescing to home arrest.
Well, as I've been talking about, these mass arrests are not quarantines. Okay, you're being forced to stay at home. You're being ordered to stay at home by whoever makes the order, whether it's the governor or your mayor or whatever.
My wife.
Well, that's something you guys can work out in your own house, but
that's for your own good, Tom.
I'll ask her. I'll see. Okay, go ahead.
But my point is that the government, they're not quarantines. and I was
what's
at
the
a
difference
loss.
between a quarantine and what's the other one?
Well,
Whatever the other one is.
isolation.
Yes, what's
there
the
are two
difference?
terms, and they're both defined by the CDC. Isolation is where you are known to have the disease, and they isolate you from everyone else who does not have the disease.
Yeah.
A quarantine is where you have been known to have been exposed, but you are then set aside so to find out whether or not you will actually exhibit the symptoms of the disease.
So the
Yeah.
quarantine has a period of expiration date kind of built into
Correct,
it?
because you either get it within the what's it called when the time between exposure,
Incubation period.
the incubation period. Yeah, thank you. So and the quarantine is for the period of the incubation, and if you get the disease, then you go to isolation. But if you don't, you pass the quarantine, you then are no longer in quarantine. What we have here is just mass house arrest of the entire population. Okay?
Wow, I know. It's
Stop
sickening.
and think about it. That's what they have issued all of these orders by your mayors and the governors and things like that, is mass incarceration of the entire population. They don't have prisons to put us in. I mean, come on, in China, they were actually throwing people into camps and prisons and literally welding people into their apartment.
So Van, did you see them pull the guy off the bus in Philly?
No, what happened?
Oh yeah, well they literally pulled a black man off of the bus by force because he wasn't wearing a mask. It looked like something out of 1968 where they were just manhandling black people.
Well, God. and this is exactly my point about the bills of attainder. A bill of attainder or a writ or an order of attainder means to be tainted. Okay, and the writ or the order is an order of government taint upon a person, and it typically would end in death. Originally, it would end in death, carry a death sentence. Later on, it would carry a forfeiture of property, a forfeiture of title, a forfeiture of lands, and so forth. It was a British creation that probably the most famous, or what to me was the most famous use, was when King Henry VIII wanted to use bills of attainder to have the legislature or the parliament declare death sentence for his wives that he wanted to get rid of. What it did was it's a legal proceeding often done at the behest of the king, and it was done through parliament, but it was done so by parliament without judicial proceeding. So we specifically, and our Constitution mentions bills of attainder 3 times, 3 separate times. I can't think of another thing that is mentioned as many times as a bill of attainder.
And it's banned, right?
It's banned 3 separate times in Article 1, Section 9, where it bans Congress from making a bill of attainder. In same article, Section 10, where it bans the states from making bills of attainder. And then judges in Article 3 are not allowed to judge, or they're supposed to overturn bills of attainder.
Okay, but we've had to do these just to actually protect people. Like in 1942, we had to protect the Orientals on the West Coast from being mistaken for Japanese intruders, so we relocated.
No, we had to protect the whites from the Japanese, because we assumed everybody must be could potentially be a traitor and a Japanese.
Okay. The relocation camps, I was using tongue-in-cheek to get the point. That was a type of attainder, wasn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
They just declared the Japanese tainted,
Okay.
and relieved them of all of their rights, and they lost their lands, they lost their property, they were moved onto a camp with whatever they could carry
Yes.
within a certain amount, because they could only take so much.
Right.
And that is a form of a bill of attainder. Yeah, thank you,
Okay.
FDR.
So we are all essentially being relocated from the public, moving about back to whatever private property we have, and told to stay at one place.
Correct. And
Okay.
well, and stop and think about it. We are told that we are tainted, that we
Yeah.
no longer have our rights. Our rights are forfeit, which is a part of a bill of attainder. You lose your rights, and this is all by executive or legislative decree, and has nothing to do with you having done anything to anybody else. Just the fear, just the possibility, the maybe, probability.
Okay, but this wasn't even done by our legislature. This was done, not a state legislature. This was just a governor declares it, or a mayor declares it.
Well,
Under the
they
act
have
of
gone.
emergency.
Remember,
under the act of emergency.
Well, they have declared the emergency, but in a lot of cases, legislatures have gone back and supported the governor, or the city council has supported the mayor.
Okay.
You had that in Altus, you had that in Guthrie, you have that just this past Monday. They wanted to give dictatorial power to the governor, and he wanted that special session to support what he had done.
Okay, now, you remember about a week and a half ago, I think you talked with an attorney in Oklahoma City, Frank
Correct.
Urbanik. And
Correct.
he pointed out that our governor had just usurped powers. We thought it was under health emergency, which does grant certain powers statutorily, despite what your arguments may be constitutionally. But the governor, we found out, wasn't declaring a health emergency at all. He was declaring a riot, wasn't he?
Well, he was using the riot statute wrongly. They were twisting it, because the riot statute uses the phrase "for public health and safety." In other words, you can't have a riot because it endangers public health and safety. Hey, if you get injured in a riot, your health is affected.
Okay.
So that is, and also in the more general sense, when you have a riotous division and you have riotous insurrection, you
Okay.
have a public health. It's not a healthy public. You have
Okay.
the social contract is
Question,
broken.
man.
Yeah, but something happened after that. When I published in Sooner Politics
Right.
Frank's article, and it got distributed, and the very next day, the governor then declared a health emergency, which doesn't give the governor power, it gives our state officer of public health the emergency powers.
Well, and again, here's the problem. Remember, there's a superior law and there's the inferior law, and only those laws made in pursuance of the Constitution are supreme law. Everything else is actually not law, because it's not consistent with the Constitution.
Right. I'm not trying to justify, I'm trying to explain the navigating that the governor's been trying to do.
Well, that's what they're trying to do, but the problem is that what they are doing is they are declaring that because we have a health emergency, the health officer or the governor in the stead of the health officer or whatever has some dictatorial authority that can suspend the Constitution entirely, suspend our rights, and issue these dictates that you have to stay inside, you have to wear a mask, you have to, whatever, irrespective. You can't assemble.
Right.
You can't go to church, whatever. All because of the health emergency. The thing is that the statute cannot usurp the Constitution. It cannot create new powers for government that violate our rights. And this is what they are doing by practice, and what they are saying that they have the authority to do.
This is a 16-year-old law that was being cited. 2004, it was written. The legislature discussed it. Eccles pointed this out last Monday morning of last week. And so it's not been tested in the courts. The constitutionality's never been tested. The fact that it's a statute on the books just means not necessarily that's constitutional. It just means they made a claim that they have a right.
Correct.
Right. Okay. So
just because there's a statute on the books doesn't mean that the statute is lawful.
Okay.
The problem is when you have a bad statute on the books and you have a decent statute that they then misuse, if you go against them, you're likely to end up before a judge. And the question is the judge corrupt or is the judge legitimate and just? And what we have seen is that the vast majority are illegitimate. They're upholding all too many unconstitutional statutes. And so we, the people, end up having no proper redress of our grievances, if we could even assemble to get them.
Right.
But even if you could get there, it's going to come down to, as Frank and I were talking about, who can make the best argument. It's not going to come down to what's the law actually say. It's going to be who can make the best argument.
Yeah. I jumped up with that picture about change too soon. Tom, do you think this is a time to jump into the whole civil change?
Yeah. I mean, we're about to wrap up. So anything else we've got?
Well, I think I have some protest predictions. And I think that the protests are about to begin. We have one, we'll put the page up on 3D Politics, sharing an event. I shared it earlier today on constitutional grounds, or I should say on this article on constitutional grounds, it was shared. But there is a protest coming up at the Capitol on Wednesday, 2 p.m., drive down to the Capitol. We're going to meet at Penn Square Mall to begin with, form up in a caravan, and then caravan over to the Capitol, and try to make a statement that we're all within their guidelines, their illegal guidelines. I want to get out and just wander around our house and have a gathering, but they want to, the organizers want to kind of try to keep anybody from having too much of a problem. And I don't think we have any no car gathering things in Oklahoma City. So anyway, 2 p.m. Wednesday, 1:30 meet at Penn Square Mall, and we'll go down there, decorate cars up.
Okay, let me ask this. The right of redress of grievance is a tantamount constitutional right.
Absolutely.
The right of peaceable assembly is tantamount, especially in the political context, right?
Absolutely.
So the fact that there being a health emergency, if our Constitution is under assault by our own government, then it becomes a requirement of a good citizen, does it not?
To do this at the very least. Actually, the duty of a citizen is to overthrow these tyrants.
Yes.
And that means at whatever cost.
Who you calling citizen, amigo?
Well, actually, the Constitution does.
Right, but again, the oath that most every public officer swears to upon whether they're elected or appointed is to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
And you know, I'm glad you brought that up. That is the oath. They do not swear to protect their constituents. They do not swear, but that's what I've been told by politician after politician after politician. Said, I swore to protect my constituents.
Okay,
like,
so here's my point in this. In Mr. Police Officer, Madam Police, peace officer, your oath did not say to protect the government against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It's to protect the Constitution.
Absolutely.
Because they are not the same thing.
They are not. The thing is that they couldn't care less about the Constitution. And so what they want to do is they want to uphold the law, and for them that means their code book, their statute book, whatever they have to work off of, and it's usually in a little flip pocket thing that they carry around in one of their pockets, and they look up their codes that they can write on their citation. It's their citation code book.
So
That's
they
what
don't have to think
of.
for themselves.
Absolutely. And they go off of virtually nothing else.
Yeah.
And so because of that, when you bring something up, it's like, hey, this is unconstitutional. They don't want to talk it, or they hit their little button. It's like, oh, we've got to record this because this we might have to use in court.
You know, one of the main things in the mayor's race 2016, and it was not only Dewey said it, Dewey, DBJ Jr., but GT, the constituents, the people of Tulsa not only have to be safe, they got to feel safe. It's like, what oath did you swear to make me feel? You know, how are you going to make me feel something? It's just, well, don't answer that.
Yeah. So when is our get together, Oldham?
What get together do you
the big
speak
protest?
Of? The protest?
Yeah.
Well, you mean for Tulsa? We need to arrange one. I haven't made one yet.
You mentioned one at the Capitol.
The Capitol is this Wednesday, so day after tomorrow. 1:30 meet at Penn Square Mall. We'll go to the Capitol at 2.
All right.
What color ink will the government be spraying us with?
Probably invisible with an electronic tracker.
Hey,
when you go through the turnpike, it'll spot you.
I was the ultimate optimist till like March 17th, whenever all this hit. And when I see the protests in Hong Kong, I just don't see that kind of testicular fortitude here in the state. I don't see any protests like that. I mean, maybe.
Well, not yet. Part of the problem is that although I think a lot of people are being fed up or getting fed up, by the same token, I think that we haven't been oppressed enough yet. People also have bought into the media.
David Oldham at Constitutional Ground.
Well, no, I think
that's
I
a
think that we have
there.
no. I mean, when I travel, and you guys know that I travel and try to help out around the country with these things, I actually have a better a better welcome when I'm on the East Coast in a fully red super majority state than I ever have here in Oklahoma.
Yeah,
fully
blue,
super majority state. So New Jersey, Connecticut, I was welcomed with open arms, people around wanting to hear what I'm talking about, things like that. I don't get that here in Oklahoma.
My prediction is going to be people who have already survived, recovered from the virus, who are then still being told that no, they are a danger, they must stay home, that they have to be protected by the government, or that the public needs to be protected from them. And, and listen, I ain't ever going to say I got to go get my paper from the Red Cross in order to, once again, go back to the public square. I'm not going to carry a paper. It's up to the government to prove that I need to be quarantined, not the other way around.
Exactly. And that's what we've got to remember. We still have due process rights, which they have, through a bill of attainder, declared we don't.
Yep.
And so we've got to start pushing back, because if we don't push back, then they're going to be gone, and they're just going to say, hey, there's precedence, so we can do it again.
Yeah.
Well, you guys, the sun will come up tomorrow. Bet your bottom dollar. You guys, you optimists, you bloody optimists, it's all over. We're sinking to hell. We'll never put up a fight like Hong Kong. Are you kidding me? We're all going to be like, yeah, I'm not getting on the bus. Which bus? Oh, well, I'll be on the shuttle.
Well, some people.
It's over.
I do believe that we have it in us, and it's been indoctrinated out of us
The children have been controlled by the government schools for so long. Now the parents that they complain, but it's the parents. Well, who do you think trained the parents? Public schools. We have 5 generations of public school trained parents. It's
Here's
just
another
going
one.
totally to hell.
There's going to be families getting a $3,000 electronic deposit this week, right? Are they going to want to stay home?
Yeah, and they can't wait till the casino opens up.
Ah, there you go. Or Branson.
If I get the check, I'm just putting it in a frame and putting it on the wall.
Yeah.
What else you guys got before we get out of here?
One thing, this is in passing, this guy, the endangered rural Democrat. This is Steve Copeland. I mentioned him in passing, I referred to him. He was the Democrat leader of the House when Scott Inman, the rumor was that he was having an affair and his wife came to the Capitol blowing up, and he just that day resigned.
Oh, we were there when that happened.
Okay, yeah. Well,
it wasn't a rumor that she blew up.
Let me tell you about this guy, Steve Copeland, real quick.
Sounds like a real affair.
The first day of the joint interim study on marijuana, right? The bicameral, call it the joint study. Steve was on that committee, and I got up there a couple of hours early, and I went up to the 5th floor to his office. Nobody else there. His LA was there. And I introduced myself to a nice guy, really nice guy. And I said, well, you probably, might not know me as well as a lot of the Republicans in this building do. I said, I'm sort of a Tea Party Republican. And Steve says to me, he says, Dave, he says, when the Tea Party movement first started, it was just as much Democrat as it was Republican. And he said, because it was about the too big to fail corporations getting all the goodies from the government, and the mom and pop's business and the working families got nothing. And I said, wow, I said, you're the first person I've talked to in this building who gets that. Now, that's the kind of guy this guy is. But his own party has left him. Now, he's trying to run again as a Democrat from Okemah. The interesting thing is his son, Sean Copeland, is one of the most trusted advisors to our governor. Sean owns, Spirit Bank? I believe Spirit Bank is owned by Sean.
Oh, really? Oh,
yes.
I didn't know that.
And he's serving as our Secretary of Commerce for the governor. So this will be an interesting thing. Now, he got defeated by a guy, Logan Phillips, who spent no money other than his own filing fee.
Really?
He won the primary, then went to runoff. Actually, his runoff opponent was managed by New Valley Forge. In fact, the campaign manager called me several times, and then to see New Valley Forge candidate lose to a man who spent no money. That was Logan Phillips, a trusted school teacher in Okemah area.
Right.
Well, and then Steve Copeland, this guy, loses to him as well. The majority leader of the House Democrats, the minority leader.
Yeah, I should run against this guy next time.
I would say his district was a little perturbed.
Yeah. But now it's not about Logan Phillips' educational legacy. It's about his voting record. And we'll see how this one turns out. Plus, this guy was busy all summer at the Capitol working on that interim study instead of back trying to campaign in his own district. Right. But this will be an interesting test of, can a rural Democrat win in Oklahoma? Because this goes back to my first story about, that happening. So this will be an interesting thing. He's a decent man. No, I don't agree with him on a lot of things, but Oldham and I, we side with the Democrats on a number of things.
I wish you guys would have told me that.
Yeah.
Hey, you have to use whatever tool is at hand, right?
Yes.
Hey, truth is truth and right is right. It's really not about who says it. It's about who's saying what's true.
We're all supposed to be Americans and Oklahomans first.
Yes.
And if we all were just obeying the law, the Constitution, then this is not an issue.
Yeah.
I mean, the parties would just be worried about the public stuff that's legit, and they can have their disagreements.
And I've said this to the Democrats. Oldham's been with me, I think, when I said is a lot of times our battles are not left versus right. They're really about big versus small. And it's sometimes the little guy against the big guy. And sometimes the Democrats are actually supporting the little guy.
Well, I'll tell you what, the little guy is suffering right now. Only the big box stores. You can only, the only people, this is a war of attrition. So if you're going to do the war analogy, for anybody who's in business, if you're a briefcase jeweler, if you're a small mom and pop, only the big box stores with the deep, deep pockets that can just wait around till it's all over. The Jared's, the Moody's, the big giant stores are going to be able to make it. But all of your basic consumerism at the lower levels gone.
Yeah, let me tell you something on that. The SBA loans that were part of the $2 trillion bailout, I found out right away. They said if you're a sole proprietor, you don't qualify. You have to incorporate in order to get government help.
Right. Yeah, if you're a sole proprietor or a partnership, I don't think it well, I think they have something, but it's not coming out yet.
Yeah, I've heard that they're changing that, but I haven't heard anything specific yet.
Yeah, I heard an interview that was talking about that. I was on a conference call with Kevin Hearn earlier. He does well, it's a town hall thing. I was on there with 18,000 close friends. Or at least
trying to talk. Okay, go ahead.
Anyway, and there were a number of business owners who were talking about the problems that they're going through. And I mean, today I went to try to get a haircut. There's hardly anybody open, and the one Chinese woman who was willing to give a haircut can't do it until Wednesday, and I have a feeling because she's booked solid. Because
it's Chinese New Year. Nailed it.
But anyway, yeah, it was and it was just, you know, and I don't know why she's open and nobody else is.
Scofflaw. That's why. Scofflaw.
Yeah.
What does she care? Like I said, only in Hong Kong.
She's probably from Wuhan.
She's like, you Americans got no fight. You know, you guys are done.
Yeah.
Hey, this has been a ton of fun, if you ask me. 3D Politics Live on the amazing Zoom. We are going to try to go live. I'm going to give them hell there at the home office and find out why we weren't able to go automatically like the money says we were supposed to Facebook. But we'll find out. Once again, I'm your fine host, Tommy McKay on Facebook and Twitter, McKay at 3dpoliticslive.com. Also, David Van at Sooner Politics. And, of course, David Oldham right over there at constitutionalgrounds.org. We will see you again next week on 3D Politics Live on Facebook next Monday. You guys take care and stay outside if you can.